Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today. This is the second seminar of a digital CPERG series that we're holding over Easter Cambridge term. The title of this seminar is Death, Peace, and Music, Learning to Live in the Resonance of Death. We're so excited today to have our very own Hilary Cremin. Hilary is a professor of peace education at the University of Cambridge, and Hilary is the advisor and supervisor of most, if not all of us CPERGers who are currently studying at the University of Cambridge. In this seminar, Hilary will be in conversation with Olivier Urbain. Dr. Olivier Urbain is the director of Min on Music Research Institute in Tokyo, Japan. The Institute focuses on the application of music in peace-building activities, which is currently known as the emerging field of music in peace-building. Olivier is definitely one of the leading scholars in this field. He's the editor of the very first book on the topic. It's called Music and Conflict Transformation. The book was released in 2008. And currently, Olivier is the visiting research professor at Queen's University, Belfast since 2015. We're so happy to have you with us, Olivier, today. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you, Hilary, for also being with us to have this conversation. We're so looking forward to hear more about peace building and music. I think I'll hand over now to Hilary to tell us more about the topic of today's session. Hilary, over to you.
Thank you so much, Basma. Yeah, I'm very excited about this session. It's a topic that's very dear to my heart and obviously to Olivier too. We've had a long interest in music and peace building, and in particular at the moment in the times of COVID, we've been reflecting again on the role of music and how it can help us to focus on inner peace at a time when so many are experiencing conflict and turmoil. I mean, I was looking at statistics just today from the Office of National Statistics in the UK. And during the past week, 81% of adult respondents said that they're worried about the effect of COVID-19. And over 1 in 5 said it was making their mental health worse. This is definitely a time when we need to think about inner peace and well-being. It seems to us that problems that lie deep in the heart of cultures of schooling have also come into sharp focus through the COVID global crisis. And we've been thinking about what we'll say when we look back about the consequences, intended and unintended, of the over-dominance of the medical paradigm and the ongoing toxic effects of Enlightenment modernity. We wonder whether perhaps we'll reflect that in the global north, psychological health, inner peace and well-being have been neglected at the expense of extending life at all costs. And also maybe that education and music might have a part to play in supporting people to know how and when to let go, and how to connect with the more than human, more than themselves, with aesthetics, spirit, the fragility of life, and therefore its beauty. We are wondering whether perhaps in the global south that we will be reminded about the need to balance deaths from COVID against the shocking levels of inequality, conflict, war and death. If we care about death in one sector of the global population, why don't we care about it in another? For example, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights has estimated that the death toll since the start of the war up to March 2018 was over 500,000. This is double the deaths that have occurred from COVID so far. We've been thinking that perhaps we need to reflect on the fact that some bodies seem to matter more than others when it comes to death and dying, and that maybe education and music might have a part to play in bringing people together and raising awareness and tackling the effects of capitalism, patriarchy, and colonialism. We ultimately want to explore the capacity of music to take us back into our bodies and into the affective and the aesthetic or spiritual realm, where we're able to see our interconnectedness with everything. Our networks, our families, our businesses, and our friendships have been pathologized as dangerous and deadly. And we'll need to recover our sense of community and our intricate interdependence, as well as recovering from the trauma of bodily isolation. So these are some of the topics that we will be exploring over the next 60 minutes or so. We also have a wonderful musical interlude, which we will come to later. But before we do that, can I ask Olivier to share his reflections with us? So what have you found about music, peace and death in these times of pandemic, Olivier? And what are the implications of this for education?
Thank you for asking. Excellent question. So when the pandemic started here in Japan, soon after China, Korea, other places, Japan was one of the first ones. I started to worry, and everybody started to worry, and the news were very worrying. But it was very confusing and diffused, like a cloud of worry affecting everybody, and not really knowing what we need to worry about. So I decided to clarify that for myself, and I realized that basically the bottom line is that I was afraid to die. I was afraid to catch the virus and then find myself in a hospital that doesn't have the luxury of taking care of me, no respirator, and I die. Okay, so then I thought if I can address that central fear, maybe I can navigate this pandemic more wisely and with a more sense of being connected to myself, others, and the world. So maybe we can all do this little experiment of thinking about our own death. It's one thing that's inevitable. We are all going to die. And if I think about my own death, I have a feeling of an ending, it's over. But then I have to think, and I invite you to do that with me, we can think about how is it possible that we think about this? The reason I think about my own death is because I am alive and I can think. Those are two incredible goodies, two incredible joys and privileges of us living beings. You can think about all the people who died already before us, all those who were supposed to be born, but something went wrong, they were never born, and those who will never ever be born. That's a lot of people. And here we are alive, able to think about our own death. So next I tried to sit in that moment, to let it resonate, this wonder of being alive here and now. And beyond words, trying not to think through words, but through breathing, through heartbeat, enjoying the fact that, wow, yes, I'm alive. And then this can even become better. How can we enhance this feeling of being alive in the here and now? By thinking about death. Because the fact that it's going to end makes it even more precious right now. And it was not too difficult actually to do this exercise, because I had been very fortunate to have a lot of training in music, musicality, and musicking. Having to live through the pandemic and see our loved ones suffer, and see how many people actually have to die, and how many are sick, and the economies are stalled. I mean, the whole list. That is very, very difficult. But this exercise of facing my own death actually was not too difficult, because we can train ourselves to do this through music and musicality. That what happens when we listen to music, when we play music with others, is that we connect at a very deep level that's beyond words, no more words. and we are grounded in the here and now. And those are two of the exercises we need to do if we want to fully enjoy the present moment here and now. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivier. So I think what you're saying there is that inner peace can be enhanced by an acceptance of our own mortality. And it's at the point at which we accept our own mortality that actually we become truly alive. Could you just say a little bit more about what you see as the role of music in that?
Yes. So, the two things I mentioned at the end. So first, the fact that music allows us to connect with ourselves and with others without words, which means without thinking, basically. So that allows us to immediately feel, and to feel in a safe space. We don't have to feel worry or anger or a sense of suspense because something is wrong with our lives. We can feel all those feelings because there is a work of art that was designed for us to feel it. It's very, very safe. And we need this rich vocabulary of feelings and emotions and even physical sensations, the vibration of music. We definitely need this very rich vocabulary to feel that we are alive here and now. The future exists only in our imagination, and so does the past. The only thing we ever have is the present moment here and now. And I'm sure everybody has noticed when you listen to music that you love, or you sing, or you perform, you don't worry about the past or the future. You are in the flow here and now, and you feel the right person in the right place.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we need to do, I think, to face the prospect of death, because we avoid each other. We don't come close to anybody less than 2 meters unless we already live with them. We're kind of like afraid of each other because now each of us is a lethal weapon. We are for others and others are for us. And how much more fear can we handle? Yeah. So we need to be able to discuss with our own death, but it's beyond words and beyond thoughts. And musicality, musicking provides a really wonderful entry point into that world of the here and now.
Yeah. And do you feel that our education systems across the world are up to the task of supporting people to access this eternal present through music? Do you feel that the situation has changed in recent years? What's your take on how music education is able to deliver some of these benefits for global populations?
Well, we can always improve everything, including education, including music education. I think it will depend on those of us who think that this conversation is important, and it's in a way it's our responsibility to share it and spread it with as much effectiveness and as much compassion as we can, because I think for the last few decades and even longer than that, the mainstream civilization we live in is not really interested in making us think about our own death. We have to think about the future. We need to ask credit and convince the bank that we will have a project that we sell, and then we can make the wheels of capitalism run. And that's what we are trained to participate in. Now, if you tell everybody, okay, we don't need to run that much, you can stay home. You don't have to take planes. You don't have to drive your car. You don't have to go to work. You can work from home. You can take care of the people in your families. We knew that if we were going to say that, there would be less destruction of the biosphere and much more consumption, and we would have to relearn new values. So we dreamt about being able to, organize something like that. But here it's kind of imposed on us. Since we are in it anyway, why not try to take advantage to relearn what is really, really important? Water, oxygen, food, sleep, and then what? Friendship, love, the meaning of life, enjoying the present moment to the deepest details of beauty and wonder, which is the here and now.
Mm.
So I'm not going to address this question of something outside of us, like the education system, but I think that those of us who feel we could move towards more of feeling our sensations, our emotions, our bodies, our connections, or how to dialogue with others, if that's the way we need to go from now on, it's up to us to share that with as many people as possible. Because education is people willing to teach and people willing to learn or having to learn. It's people.
Yeah.
And this kind of idea can only be transmitted by other people, I think.
Thank you, Olivier. I absolutely love what you said there, and I completely agree with you. And it seems to me that our death has almost been taken from us. It's a very natural process. Our ability to accept our mortality, processes of grieving, and so on, almost sort of stolen from us, and then packaged and commodified and sold back to us in some kind of a way. So with the forces of capitalism and patriarchy and colonialism, it seems to me that we've been cut off from something that's actually extremely important in order to feel truly alive, and actually in order to make wise decisions socially and politically that are in the interests of the entire planet. If you think about Halloween, for example, so it's the one time when we focus on death. It's through trick or treat. It's through commercial masks that are sold in shops. It's through people consuming sugary goods that have been packaged and created, and where somebody somewhere makes a profit. It's very it's very dissociated. It's very cut off. We valorize the body in many ways through beauty products, through fitness. Everything is about the body, and we're sold all kinds of ways in order to enhance our body, probably at the expense of many other aspects of life. And that's again just cut us off from the finite nature of the body and our ability to accept our death. And you're right, this time at the moment potentially offers us a new unique opportunity. Who knew that it would be possible for us to put the whole world to a standstill? It seems there are so many crises in the past that would have warranted a complete standstill like this, but somehow it wasn't possible. And yet now apparently it is. And this is a golden opportunity. And I wonder actually if this is a really good time for us to hear from Akihito and to experience music at a more bodily, aesthetic and visceral level. So I'll introduce perhaps the piece of music and ask Akihito if he wouldn't mind taking off his muted sound and video so that we'll be able to hear him in just a moment. And I'll just introduce this by saying that this is a piece of music by Chopin that many people will recognize as the Funeral March. And Akihito has chosen this today. And there's a very surprising passage in the middle that I actually wasn't aware of. So I do invite people listening, first of all, to celebrate the beautiful piano playing, because Akihito is a member of CPERG, but he's also a world-class concert pianist. So we're incredibly privileged to have him with us today. And as he's playing, can we perhaps notice the impact of the playing on the affective aspect of life, the aesthetic, the spiritual, the psychological, the emotion, and maybe save up some thoughts to share later after the performance is finished. Okay, thank you very much, Akihito. Wow. It's very, very, very hard to know how to follow that. That is utterly, utterly incredible. Yeah, I think we were certainly put in touch with the affective, the aesthetic, the spiritual. That was amazing, and it's very, very hard to know how to follow it. But I guess we should continue. So Olivier, would you mind switching your video and sound back on, please? There we are. I know that Akihito is in the background recovering from that performance and will join us again. But now is not a good time to ask him for any kind of verbal response. As a musician, Olivier, do you want to say anything about that?
Well, I think it was first, thank you, Akihito. It's very, very important to always thank the artist with profound gratitude. So thank you. Thank you. That was wonderful. And we can imagine how much preparation and work you had to go through during this pandemic with everything we have to do. And you offered this performance to us. Thank you so much. I won't speak too much because we need to hear other people's voices. I just wanted to say that this march can be a metaphor for everything we've talked about as far as our worldwide educational system. Why am I saying that? It's because we all know we know that part. Everybody knows that part. However, I personally didn't even know the middle part, and you know, especially, I mean, you know, the part where it's a celebration of life in the middle of death, which is exactly what we mentioned. So I think this piece was the right choice. It shows us that we've been told how to handle bomb, 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 briefly, and okay, you're gonna die at the end of your life, so make the most out of it before by getting a good job and making money and being successful, because when it's over, it's over. And we don't really want to think about it. Whereas Chopin wrote something to tell us about the present moment, about enjoying life right here, right now, with the awareness that it starts with pom, 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 and ends with pom, 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 pom. What really matters is the present moment, which is squeezed in between here and now. Why have we been only told about pom, 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 pom? That may be a good question to ask ourselves when we think about education in general and music education. I could speak forever, so I think it's time to end my own march. Thank you.
Yes, I agree. and also even within the bomb bit, there was emotion, there was joy, there was energy at various points as well as the slightly more circular, repetitive, heavy parts. And so it says something about joy and emotion in the heart of difficult times and death and bereavement and dying. Yeah. So shall I give my responses, Olivier, to some of the questions that we were thinking about for this conversation?
Yes, we would love to hear from other people who have so many things to teach us, especially the younger generation.
Yeah.
We really want to hear your responses to all that and learn from you. So this is the time.
Shall I just summarize some of the points that I was going to make, and then maybe we can lead into that. I think a lot of the things I was going to say have probably already been said in our wider conversation. So I just wanted to highlight three, which I hope that people from CPERG will be able to pick up when they come back and give us their responses. So the first two I've already touched upon, so I'll just summarize them very quickly here. The first is about the harm that's done through the dominance of the medical paradigm in our social and political decision making, and the links with the toxic effects of Enlightenment, modernity, and over-reliance on rationality, science, reason, economics, at the expense of other ways of knowing and being, and those that emerge from arts-based paradigms, and particularly here from music. So there's something to do with the harm that's done by the dominance of the medical paradigm. The second point, again, which I've touched upon, is to do with the fact that global society, both before and during the pandemic, is based on capitalism, neoliberalism, patriarchy, colonialization, with the result that everything is controlled, packaged, commodified, even our own death. And this robs us of the opportunity to engage with it meaningfully. And it also leads to an undervaluing of death in other parts of the world where it way outnumbers deaths from COVID, the deaths from poverty, the deaths from war, the deaths from armed conflict. And yet somehow it's been seen to be utterly unthinkable that we should renegotiate our social contracts, our political understandings in the face of this death. But the fact that we now have European, American, Western, privileged white bodies who are at risk of death, suddenly the unthinkable has become thinkable, and our society has been closed down. So we do need to think about what that tells us about our relationships and the way that we are globally interconnected, and potentially to think about the role of the arts and music to helping to reconnect us and to bring us together in music making and in other projects. Young people all over the world are engaging in poetry and in music and in art. Their voices are resounding, but we're not hearing them. We're not acting on those voices. We're not enabling young people to re-enter into the conversation about what it means to have a peaceful and beautiful life. And we need to do that, not just in these times of pandemic, but also in whatever emerges from it. I think the final thing that I did want to say that I haven't yet touched upon is the fact that the utter unknowability of the future. And we have been, and even more so now, we are educating for futures that we have no idea about. We have a rupture in history. We don't know how we can prepare our young for the futures that they will live in when we return, or we're not going to return to normal. So what we're turning towards is completely changed. So we need an education that's worthy of the young. We need an education that enables them to rekindle their love of self-directed learning, education that's creative and dynamic, perhaps some of the education that's been happening in homes across the world over the past few weeks, supported by loving adults, and also by the power of the internet as well, and all of the knowledge that is available. How can we embrace the best of that in order to ensure that education worthy of its name takes us forward into our unknowable future? And I think that's where I'm going to stop, and to invite people from CPIRG to switch their videos back on and to give us a response to some of these provocations. So Olivier and I are of a different generation. We really want to hear from you. What do you make of this? What is the challenge for education and for music and for developing inner peace as we move forward? Maybe we could do this by people, if I go into gallery view, if people could indicate by raising a hand that they'd like to speak, and then I'll mention them by name, and then we can make sure that that gets recorded. Thank you. So we have Roy who would like to make a contribution. Thank you, Roy.
And I'm speaking from the top end of the age bracket in this group, and I apologise for speaking first. But I'm currently working with children. This morning I had a wonderful lesson with children in Nepal and Oldham who are going through a 5-week programme on exploring art and creativity for managing change and transformation and learning. And my observation is that actually, you said about what can we do to teach the children. I think we're in such turmoil at the moment. The elders have lost their voice. The elders have lost their voice. We've never done this before. It's always been, we come to the elder and they will advise us. But what I'm seeing at the moment is that children are educating their parents. Some of the children that have been least engaged in the learning are now more engaged in it because they're able to work in an environment that isn't so divisive and violent. And the people that are lost are not the children. They're the adults. And the reason why the children are suffering is because the adults around them haven't yet to challenge their own perceptions and actions, because they've never been educated to be this flexible. But we have a generation and generations who are and are keen to do this. And I think our role as the elders is to get out of their way. That's my thought.
Thank you, Roy. That's an amazing contribution. Is there anybody that would like to respond to that or to make a point of their own? Angana, thank you.
Thank you very much. This was one of the most powerful conversations I have heard since COVID broke. So thank you very much for doing this. Some of the things that I was reflecting back while you and Oliver were talking and Akihito was playing was the fact of how we are educated to deal with things that happen in our life. And I'm currently working around issues of happiness and education and speaking to educators who are supposed to teach happiness inside classrooms, which is actually an emotion and a feeling and cannot be taught. So I was just wondering, COVID is a reality and there will be many such more uncertainties that will happen in our lives. But are we ever taught this in school? I don't think so. We are always, so what you were sharing, Hilary, about the capitalistic model, which we all have sort of now been grappled within, is this, that we are told that if you study in a certain way, study certain subjects, you will score this much, you will get through this kind of a job and your life will be really good. And there is absolutely no addressal of the challenges that comes in a youth's life when you pass out of school or when you're young, and what life generally is, which is actually about life, death, and all kinds of emotions, which are from sadness, despair, disappointment to the happier emotions. So when I was listening to Akihito's like how he was playing, I don't think I can ever forget this in my life. So that is the power of music and arts, and something that is not harnessed inside classrooms ever. And even if it is done, it is sort of done as an extra hobby, or something that you can just learn to say that I know 2 different instruments or one more, a craft work. At least in India, I can speak for that. That's how we grow up. But to really understand that there are ways of knowing other than the general ways of knowing, which is sort of transferring knowledge from one generation to other. Arts is a way in which we can experience and we can feel and we can come up with something which is our own. And that's extremely powerful, much more powerful than the traditional methods in which we have been trained. So I feel like COVID is a time when we all as researchers and educators can think of different ways in which we can, I think that the ways needs to be changed in a way, so that we just not know or be informed, but also understand and experience. So yeah, I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Angela. That's really inspiring to hear, and your work in Delhi is so important, so important. Do we have someone who would like to follow on from that, or would like to make a separate point? Well, thank you.
First, thanks so much to all y'all for this wonderful and inspiring session. I echo Angana, and I will definitely, this memory will sit with me for a long while. So thank you for that. I've been thinking about a lot of things in this kind of hour that we've been here together. And one thing that comes to my mind is how all of this conversation intersects with the way patriarchy interacts in the world. And thinking about patriarchy not just as a structural arrangement that tells us what to do and what to think and what to feel, but also really critically as patriarchy as a force that tells us what not to feel, and particularly how patriarchy affects young men, which the focus of my research, so I'm biased in that direction, but how it encourages young men to not feel, or to feel in very rigid and policed ways. And so thinking about patriarchy as an anesthetizing force that numbs down our capacity to feel and to be present in the world. And I was really struck with the way that you all spoke about art as this potential force in the world to help us kind of bring life back into our bodies, and music being beyond words and grounded in the here and now. And I think those are the antithesis of the forces of patriarchy in a lot of ways in my mind. And thinking about how can we harness the arts, how can we cultivate the arts to address not just what we should do, but the inverse as well, and those capacities, those forces that are blocking us. And so in that sense, thinking of the arts as the capacity of awakening us, and that ability to awaken us to connect our mind to our heart, to our body, to counter this force that you spoke about, Hilary, in your first kind of provocation around the harm of the medical paradigm, and really thinking about the arts as a potential to use the medical metaphor back on itself as a potential antidote to the medical metaphor and paradigm itself.
Thank you so much, Will. As ever, very, very insightful, and your work on poetry with men is also very, very powerful in this respect. I think Simone had her hand raised and that she'd like to speak. Thank you, Simone. Hi.
Hi. Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for this amazing talk. It's very inspiring, and unlike any other Zoom sort of seminar I've attended, and thanks especially for Akihito's contribution. My research right now, it's looking specifically at how students and academics at our own Faculty of Education are experiencing the pandemic and the way it impacts their work, and how they're reimagining the future. And one of the things that I've noticed in conversations is that, and that kind of also connects to Will's point from just now, is that also people don't have time in our current system to actually engage with what's going on at an emotional level, at a physical level, at a spiritual level. People are first and foremost, oh, sorry, can you hear me? yeah, people are first and foremost just stressed about about economic reasons, you know, like losing their job, this kinds of insecurity. We're in a capitalist system where you're supposed to produce. You have to publish or perish, and that's what not only characterizes our academic system, but also the educational system in which we're educating people to then learn a profession with which they can earn a livelihood. That's the main goal of education as it is right now. So that's very much tied into the capitalist system. So there's not even time to actually be in touch with how we are coping with this emotionally with crises like these. And people are more susceptible to burnouts and stuff.
Thank you, Simone. Absolutely, absolutely. There's I think it was Karl Marx who said that capitalism would disintegrate first as tragedy and then as farce. And I think at the moment, just looking at what's coming out of the US and other parts of the world, it's the whole thing has just become utterly unsustainable. And you do wonder how much longer we can continue clinging to this. It's like it's the only game in town, and there is no other way. Would people perhaps just wave rather than showing a reaction? Because I think I can probably see better if people wave than if you use Zoom. Kana, lovely. Could we have, yeah, go ahead, please do.
Yes, thank you. So thank you so much for the dialogue and also music by Akihito. Listening to that, I was reflecting on the role of education and what education needs to teach, especially for younger generations. And I thought, you know, skills are one thing that education needs to teach, but also the values. And one of them is the attitude toward the world or toward the future. To be really hopeful about the future is sometimes difficult, especially when the world pandemic is happening like right now. So I thought that's where arts and music can come in and let the people show kind of different sides or different elements of the world so that we can stay hopeful.
Thank you very much, Kana. Alex has had to go, but she sent a message in chat that I'll just share with you before handing over to Basma. So Alex says, thank you so much, Hilary and Olivier and CPERG. This has been so insightful and led me to reflect deeply about my own understanding of death and how this reimagining may help the well-being of others. Basma.
Hey, thank you, Hilary. So I think I have just one note and maybe one question for us to think of. The note is following up. Hilary, you talked about the over-reliance of rationality and the impact of modernity on our thinking. And I just find it interesting that in my mind, I always see the over-reliance on rationality as like it correlates somehow with luxury, or if luxury is a big word, it's like a lack of a struggle. Because for me, like where there is a struggle, there are always different ways of knowing and different ways of being. Like, you know, guys, that I was in Syria. I can never imagine how would I like ever survive. Like, I only left Syria in 2015. If I hadn't at that time totally embraced death, like I know I'm going out to university, there is a high like percentage that I might not come back. So I think like this is really important, and people usually like just understand the importance of other ways of knowing when there is a struggle. So the second point is like, honestly, after Akihito played his piece, I was just thinking the power of music to shake us is just unique. And we as scholars in the field of peace building, I'm just thinking like we read a lot and talk a lot about pedagogy of the privileged and pedagogy of discomfort, which is like prevalent in the field of global citizenship education and nowadays in the field of peace education. So maybe we should start thinking on how to create a kind of synergy, or how, in what ways we can start reflecting in conversations in the emerging field of music and peace building with these other discussions in the field of global citizenship education. So these are really important points that we should start maybe reflecting on. So yeah, thank you all for everything.
Thank you so much, Basma, for regrounding us in the realities of the Global South. I think that's something that's been very important for us to think about today, and the other ways of knowing that come about when people are living on the edge that we've been sanitized from in so many ways, and which makes us very vulnerable and very two-dimensional when it comes to some of the big issues that we're suddenly needing to grapple with. I wonder whether this might be a good time to hand back to our wonderful guest speaker all the way from Japan, Olivier, to maybe give us some closing remarks on perhaps anything that you've picked up on in what's been said today, Olivier, in feedback, and maybe to add your own concluding comments too.
Great, yes, thank you. I became very hopeful and optimistic after listening to all of you, because before I heard your voices, I felt like most people, we are going into the complete unknown. We have no roadmap, we have no blueprint, we are completely lost. For some reason, by listening to you, I realized that actually we do have things that we can use if we kind of refresh them or give them a new twist. I was thinking about two of them as you were speaking. Today I had another session with another country, and we talked about an old book in which there is the concept of repressor. A repressor is somebody who has been trained to repress their feelings. So you cannot cry if you're a boy, you cannot feel anger, you cannot. So by being trained like this, we disconnect ourselves from our feelings. And when we become adults, we don't even know when we are irritated or angry or sad, and we are totally cut off from our emotions. And that's what is called a repressor. There's millions of repressors today in places of authority where they've been trained to disconnect from their bodies and their emotions. What is that book? It's an old book, 1995, Daniel Goleman, Emotional Intelligence. I think it's time to go back to that book right now. It reads really differently in the pandemic. It reads really fresh, and we still haven't learned how not to be repressors, how to really connect with our bodies and our feelings. And the second one, and last one for today, is simply Kant. Kant, I think, had very good ideas about how to build world peace, but he thought only rational people, or only the rational part of people, would connect and create world peace. Well, maybe we could reread Kant and, forgive him for that horrible blunder that he didn't know he was making. It's not connecting through rationality that's going to help us to move towards a better society, and maybe the type of peace he was thinking about is exactly what you mentioned, through the body, the vibes, the feelings, the emotions. And when we play music together, we clap our hands together, or if we record one voice and then record another voice and put them together, which we can do through technology today, even though we are separated, we can still feel like we are singing together. We don't need to explain, we don't need to think, we don't need to rationalize, and we feel totally connected and we feel so good. So I just want to repeat everything that was said, that through music, musicality, the body, the emotions, being able to play like Akihito, or being able to listen to music like Akihito. Listening is hard work. There's a lot going on in the brain. It's a lot of work. It's musicking. So thank you very much for your encouragement, your emotional encouragement today. I feel much more hopeful that actually maybe whatever the strange future we're going to, we are not completely lost. There are already stuff that we know that we can use or reuse. So thank you for this encouragement.
Thank you, Olivier. I could say a lot of thanks, but I'm actually going to hand over to Basma, who will end this session on behalf of CPERG. Thank you, Basma.
Thank you so much for such an insightful session. I think you're leaving us all with ideas and thoughts to further reflect on. Personally, this session really touched me in different ways. So thank you both, Hilary and Olivier, for being with us today. And I think with this seminar, our CPIRG digital seminar series is definitely richer, more timely, more meaningful. Akihito, thank you for a phenomenal performance. That was absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for that. This session will be soon uploaded to our YouTube channel. Please, if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, please do. Thank you all for being with us today.